Well, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
So you're on two different cameras, John?
Actually am, yeah. But I'm
Yeah.
talking now into this one. I'm talking into this one now that's looking right at me. It's a webcam. And welcome aboard, everybody, to number 60 in the Lancaster area Woodturners weekly coffee hour. We are coming to you today from our new meeting space at Kaufman Kitchens in New Holland with all of our junk set up, and we will give you a tour of all that in a couple of minutes. I'm first going to do the usual round of announcements, and the first of those is this is your new issue of American Woodturner, which with a cover that I just absolutely love. And the reason I'm holding that up is that we invited the current journal editor, Josh Friend, who's been the editor for some time, to come on with us in 2 weeks, June 17th. And he will be interviewed and answer questions, and you can air your issues with the journal and find out how he works and why he does it the way he does. I think he's going to be a very interesting guest. He's also a very good wood turner, and I think we'll get some pictures of his work as well. So that's coming up in 2 weeks. Today we have several things we want to do. We're going to show you our setup. Barry's going to show a very ingenious thing that he's made. And we're going to invite you to show and tell what you're working on, or what you most recently worked on, if you can remember what that was, if you're not working on anything now, or something you worked on in the past that you think is pretty good. So there's no excuse for not having something to show. Or you can even default to some goofy tool or some favorite tool. But at some point in here, I'm going to roam the screen and ask all of you. But first, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try to go to gallery view. Okay, now there in gallery view, you can see all the people who are with us in Zoom. And it looks to me like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 5, 25 screens, but 2 of them are me, 3 of them are me, 2 of them are me, and 1 of them is the room. And facing off with you all, we got this fabulous bunch of chairs with 4 Lancaster Club members in the audience. And if we had 20, we would have 20 guys in those chairs. And you're seeing them through an iPhone that's phoning into the Zoom call. And we haven't quite got figured out where to put it or how to maneuver it, and it might be the wrong camera for this job. But the thought is that we got a bunch of people in a screen looking at you, and they are looking at a screen with all of you on it. So they're seeing you on a 75-inch TV. Let me see, what else do I want to show? Well, one of you, Doug or Alan, well, one of you guys look around the room and just show everything. Now, we're still learning how to do all this, so there's a little bit of roughness here, but here it comes. So there's the camera that Doug is operating, a Canon Vixia on a tripod, which the club owns, which was about $250.
John, excuse me, if you pin the camera, only you can see it full screen. If you spotlight it, everyone will see it full screen.
I have it spotlighted. Are you not seeing it full screen?
No.
I do.
I am.
We are.
I am.
If you go to speaker view, you'll see it. Yeah.
Maybe go to speaker view, Jim.
There we go.
Okay. So yeah, everybody ought to be seeing the room here, which has got insulation in the walls, but no sheetrock. There's our big TV reflected in window light on a on a Skookum strong, heavy cabinet that Barry made. What we did is we bought a 75-inch TV and a stand for it. We looked at the stand and said, you know, this is not going to work. It's going to fall over. So Barry built a monster heavy cabinet on wheels and then attached the stand to it. So you would now take 2 or 3 guys to tip this thing over. Okay, what else are you going to show? Now you're looking at down there is our small mini lathe in the far end of the room. And here's all the boxes of junk we haven't yet digested. And then there's all the chairs that the huge present crowd is sitting in today. Go all the way around. And then there's me sitting in the corner behind one of the, for you guys in other clubs, one of the decisions we made that I think was a good one. A lot of guys are buying high-end gamer laptops to run Zoom setups and interactive remote demos. And that may be the right thing for an interactive remote demo. When we thought about it, we said, we don't want no laptop. We don't want it to walk around. And we found a used computer store here where we could get a fully loaded Lenovo from 2017 with an i7 chip, 2 terabytes of memory, 16 gigs of RAM, and well, I don't know, 8 or 9 USB ports. So we bought that for $300, and it is working very, very well.
I guess that's pretty much it, John.
I'll show the boom. Yeah. And zoom out a little bit on the boom.
I'm as wide as I can go.
Oh, no, the other way. Oh, I see. Yeah, okay. Well, then, yeah, there's the camera boom. Now, this is the plans that Rick Baker made for the AAW. And Doug built this back at the time when we were hosting the Mid-Atlantic Symposium. And several of these were made for the symposium, and he made one for the club. And what it allows is a camera to be positioned almost anywhere, including right overhead the workspace. As you can see him moving it around there. And it's quite a very cool setup. I mean, it's very clever the way these guys figured it out. The boom works really well. He can manipulate the camera from the end, working those levers. And he can see what it's seeing on a little screen that it plugs into, and then the video splits and comes over to the computer here. It also, one of the problems with this setup is if you want to change the zoom or telephoto on the camera that's out there in the boom, the remote control needs to see the infrared eye. So these guys figured out an optical cable that allows the remote that's down near their Doug's hand to send a message to that camera. So that's what all the cables are all about, but it works. It's a mighty piece of engineering, and it really works well. So I got to hand it to Rick Baker of the, what is he? He's vice president. He's on the AAW board, and he's, I guess, with Bucks County. And Rick designed this thing, and quite a few of them have been made around the various clubs. Anything you want to say about it?
Yeah, Rick has made the pattern or the design of it available to anybody, and outside, well, with the camera and everything else, when we originally put it together, I think the total cost, camera included, was about $700. So if you have screens and cameras or whatever, most of the metal and is fairly inexpensive. So it doesn't, you can put it together with a tripod fairly easily, and it really balances and stays well. So
that's a pretty mighty tripod it's on. The camera that's out there is an earlier model of the Canon Vixia. We have found that the Canon Vixias work very well for this purpose. They get into the USB port by way of a video capture card, which we bought $40 ones. You can get them anywhere from 20 to 100. You want one with low latency that's suitable for gamers. And it allows you to plug the HDMI output from the camera into it, and out of it comes USB that the computer can receive. So that's the setup we got here. The 2 Canon Vixias, one on a tripod and one on the boom, are our main cameras. And then there's, as I say, a little webcam on top of this computer that could look at me. And I, just for the sake of trying to get control of this monster, I also have an iPod that over here to my left. That's one of the problems. I don't know right from left and never have. So now back to gallery view. Since we're talking about that, any questions or comments about the setup?
So what camera are you panning around to look at the room with?
That's the second Canon Vixia on a tripod being operated by Alan Miller.
Okay.
And it's right over here also, just a couple of feet to my left.
Is that another camera on that screen that Barry made there that we're looking at?
Yes, that's an old iPhone that's looking at the room, and that's what produces the picture of the room. That is, where did it go? Oh, I know. I see why I'm not seeing it. It's over here. There it is.
That Canon Vixia seems to be the most popular camera I've seen at clubs. I mean, most of the clubs in Atlanta use one, and I use them for my video production, and it seems like you go back 4, 5, 6 generations of it, and the software operating system seems virtually identical with every upgrade.
That's right. And the big advantage of them is it puts out what you might call clean HDMI. There's no no tech messages on the screen about f-stops and speeds and FPS and all that stuff, which you can have on these cameras. And then when you're looking at the camera, it's all there. But what it puts out to the computer, there's a setting you can find that erases all that. So you get a clean picture. That's the real advantage of them. Now, as I said before, you're facing off against the room full of dudes. That's the view from the phone cam. We have it set as if there was a room full of people here. But also what we're planning to do when someone in the room wants to speak is the Vixia on the tripod. That's Alan. Alan, I'm going to switch to you. Okay, that's you. And I'm going to spotlight that one. Okay, now Alan can zoom in, for example, on Barry back there in the room, and Barry can fill the screen and talk. He's wearing a microphone because he's going to demo something. But if he wasn't, he would be holding his hand up to ask for the talking stick, which is this. You're going to bring it back to me. That's the talking stick. It's just a microphone taped to a scraper. So now we got symmetry in the room. If you're out there in Zoom land and you want to talk, use raise hand and I'll see you. As Kai has raised hand, and I'll get to him in a minute. And if you're in the room and you want to talk, you raise your hand and you get the talking stick. So now everybody is treated more or less equally. I'm going to go back to gallery view. And who had their hand up there? Was that you, Kai?
Yes, yes. I just wanted to ask how you switch between cameras. Do you use Zoom to do that, or have you got kind of a video control or something external?
Most people are using a little $300 unit called an ATEM Mini to do that. I'm not. I'm using Zoom, and it's Alt-N on Zoom. Any camera plugged into the USB bus can be switched that way. And I'm going to switch to this camera and demo that. That's the one I want. There. Now that's Alan. That's the camera on the tripod that Alan has. That's the overhead camera that's on the boom. And that's the webcam that's taped to the top of the computer, which I'm not actually meaning to be using much today, but there it is. And I've got control of the talking stick right now. So it's a wheel, and Alt-N steps around them in Zoom. And if those of you who are experimenting with Zoom, you can find out more of that if you go to share screen, and then there's a tab that says advanced. And when you go to advanced, it shows you the Alt-N, and it gives you the option of changing cameras there. The other way to do it is down by the video, where on the lower left where the video picture is, the stop video icon. And if you pull the caret up, it will show all of the cameras, and I can click from one camera to the next by simply doing on that caret. And that's the way that I can jump from one to the other without going around the wheel.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, John, that's what I've done so far. I used this function that you described last. The only problem is if I have several cameras, can I give names to the cameras in Zoom so that I know what camera I'm clicking on? I mean, they stay in the order, but if you are kind of demonstrating and using cameras at the same time, I sometimes get confused which camera I want to have. And then it would be nice to name one overhead camera and one camera on the left or on the right or something like that. Is that possible in Zoom to give names to the cameras so that this is shown in Zoom?
I had the same question, and I'm going to put it to the Zoom people online because both of these Canons show up as USB camera, which is hardly helpful.
Yeah.
There's the same issue on the microphones. I found on the microphones, I have 5 or 6 choices of microphone, and the one that says microphone high definition audio device is my Movo microphone controller. yeah, I think that's something that we can address, ask Zoom and maybe find out.
Yeah, that's the same problem with the microphones, as you said, because each camera has got a microphone, and then this shows up in Zoom as well. So you have several microphones to choose from. This boomstick, is that via cable, or does that use infrared transmission or anything else?
The microphone on the talking stick?
On the talking stick, yes, sorry.
Yeah, the microphones that we bought a 2-microphone Movo system for $170, and it operates on 2.4 gigahertz, and it has a receiver and 2 remote mics. So we decided, okay, one remote mic is for the speaker of the day, and the other is on a talking stick to be passed around the room. And I've got the talking stick right now, and Barry has the mic clipped onto his shirt collar.
Mm-hmm.
We also found that since they're lapel mics, you don't have to hold it in front of your mouth and spit into it. You can hold it beside your collar, and it picks up the sound just fine.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, I see Jim Bowman has a question.
Yeah, and you may have addressed it already. I was wondering how you switch audio. How do you, and I think Kai was asking this too, how do you avoid the audio from the camera you select appearing on your audio track?
It doesn't appear because I have the audio set on the little Movo unit, and I'm keeping it there. Just a second now. Here's another experience there. Now I'm seeing, I don't know if you are, I'm seeing the two guys who has raised hand, and I'm seeing myself with the talking stick. This is the Movo units look like this. They're these little boxes, and the one that's the receiver plugs into the external mic port on the PC, and I just leave it set there. And we found that I can stand right next to the other mic, and they don't interfere with each other.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So there are systems that have more mics, and we might wish we'd bought one, but we were still figuring this out at the time. We also think, we haven't tried this yet, that we can run an external speaker in the room so the guys in the room can be amplified without causing a screech. But I'm not sure if that's true. We haven't tried anything there yet.
Mm-hmm. I've tried that in my workshop. I've got a stereo in the workshop which I connect to my laptop, and this is what I use for audio to talk to the other club members, and that works fine. So there's no interference with my microphone, and that's a radio frequency thing as well. So that is should be possible. And the microphone even blocks out other noises. So the people listening do not hear dust extraction or vacuum pump or whatever I'm running at the time. So that's a great thing with the microphone, and there's no feedback to the speakers, so no problem.
The other thing we learned about this setup, or that we have, we're very lucky in, we have a network cable. So we're on Ethernet on the computer. That has eliminated a lot of problems versus Wi-Fi. If we were on Wi-Fi, we would have a lot of latency with more than one camera involved.
John, how do you avoid, or let me ask it this way, are both microphones live? In other words, if Barry talked while you were talking, you would hear him? There's no way to switch one off and the other off?
I'm talking right now, Jim. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I do, but that's why my concern is if you talk while you're wearing it, how do you avoid over talking the main speaker?
He could turn it off. There's a switch on these boxes. He could turn his mic off.
And then I know from my experience, it'll be off when it needs to be on.
Exactly right.
It's like the mute button or on Zoom.
I think
Zoom allows you to switch microphones, but I think you're on multiple Zoom channels, right? You have a Zoom iPhone, Zoom iPad, Zoom. So that's why you've got multiple mics on at the same time, right?
No, we have multiple mics on at the same time because we bought a little system called a Movo Duo that has a transmitter or receiver and 2 remote mics. And normally I would be wearing the one on my collar and passing the talking stick around, but I know that Barry's going to be making a presentation, so he has the one on his collar. But the 2 mics are both live. Say something, Barry.
All right. How's this?
And how's this?
He sounds good. Is it possible for you to mute it at the receiver site so only one's on at a time, since you're sitting right there?
No, they're both on. I don't have that choice. The system just gives me both mics. The way to do it is he has a switch on his transmitter. I mean, if I'll turn mine off for a second. I'm going to turn the switch off. No, you can't hear me. And I should be back now. Am I back?
Yes.
Yeah.
I see, John, you may want to look at that a little more. You're going to have an issue in the past with that, in the future with that, because that's a common problem with multiple mics. It's hard to resist Barry leaning over and whispering to Doug while you're talking, and it's just going to be interfering. So I don't know if there's a way to get a different, I know a mixing board makes it more complicated, but you need a way to mute one of those so only one's live at a time.
Well, I think actually the way I'm going to do it is I will wear the one and it's live because I'm the moderator. And then Barry or Alan or one of the other people in the room will manage the talking stick. And they're just going to have to learn how to do it. And probably they'll do it by holding it down here.
So if they're carrying it, John, they can just mute it because since they're managing it, muting it is not a problem for them. But a performer always forgets to turn their microphone back on.
Exactly right. So I think that the correct way is that the talking stick manager manages the talking stick, and when it needs to be off, he turns it off.
The point that you make, though, John, is Jim, is that we have two mics in the room. If you have one on the demonstrator and one at the manager, then there's no mic in the room for people in the room here to ask questions. We need to think about that.
Yeah, we're desperately trying to avoid ATEMs and mixing boards because that makes a learning curve. And it means that we no sooner get some guy trained up on it than he dies or he moves or he doesn't want to be a woodturner anymore.
One thing to look at, we used to use them a lot and hated them in our business, but they did a purpose. They're called gated mics. You can have any mic is muted until the voice is activated, it speaks, then it gates it open. Now, sometimes people were annoyed by that because they could hear the first part of the phrase clipped to a gated. But I would look for a gated operation as a possibility. I don't know if they have it it's been 20 years since I've done production, or 15. But that was one way to avoid multiple mics open. And I think that would help you a lot.
I think there's a lot of things we can do like that. And I agree with you. What we did in this case is we spent $170 on this little system. So we're going to use it until it gives us problems. There's an awful lot of new equipment out in the market to address these kinds of problems. And I've been trying to learn my way through it. The Movo system is one. That's the one I spent the most time learning. Our Rode is another, RODE. There's a lot of equipment with that brand on it. And those guys seem to have speakers and all sorts of things for remote conferencing. It all came alive during during COVID all last year. So I agree with you, Jim. I think we'll probably graduate to a bigger, better system. But right now we're going to use this one.
Hey, by the way, the sound quality is quite fine in my book. I mean, what I'm hearing in my headphones is very fine sound quality.
Anybody have any issues with the sound they're hearing?
No.
I suspect any issues are going to be at the other end with the speakers in your computer. Part of the issue with all of this stuff is we don't have any control over what our members are using to join Zoom. Some of them are on 10-year-old, 15-year-old laptops. Some of them are on PCs with a webcam clipped to the front of it. And we also have no control over their ability. I mean, we thought we'd scored a huge victory a year ago, March and April, when we persuaded 85% of our membership to come on Zoom one day. There was about 6 weeks of work behind that. We were, all four of us on the exec group, were phoning people and persuading them to try Zoom and talking them through it and helping them get the download. So it's really the technical hill is is steep and various and lots of chasms in it.
And you could shave while you're holding that mic because you have a scraper there. You know, you could just shave while you're holding it.
Well, that's the reason I didn't put it on a skew chisel. I figured that there was a pretty good chance that somebody's going to jam it up their nose without thinking. So it's on a blunt scraper. Okay, I'm going to go back to gallery view and look for other questions before we go on here. Any other questions or comments that anybody wants to make? And go for it, because I'm very interested in testing all this stuff out. So, and the more practice we get switching around, the better off we're all going to be.
So,
John,
John,
I can see 25 people on the screen at one time. How can I increase that?
Who's asking that?
That's Gerald.
Yeah, you have to go into your Zoom software, and you can increase it to 49. I can't, because I'm sharing two I'm using two screens, so I have to dance between the two, which I can do. Well, I think I got them all on there now. I'm not sure. No, it's this way. Yeah.
on what mode are you in that Kai and I are featured along with you?
I want to cancel all that. That's in you are all three spotlighted. Remove all spotlights. Now you should all be seeing either me as the speaker or the gallery if you're in gallery view, and that's your choice. I can't manage that for you. You can manage that. So if
you want to know how to increase to 49, that's pretty simple. You click on the up arrow by where it says stop video and select your video settings, and then scroll down and you'll see a choice of, I think, what is it, 24 and 49 that you can click on, and that'll change your screen to hold 49 people on one screen.
Is that on general?
Hello.
Sorry, could you say that again? How you do it? You go to
So click on the up arrow where it says stop video. At the bottom
Okay,
left of the
I'm in
screen.
a meeting
Click
here.
on video settings.
yes.
Do you
And
have
then
a
scroll
problem right
down.
off?
You don't see it. Scroll down towards the bottom of that, and you'll see 25 or 49 as a radio button.
Got it.
Ah, yeah. Okay.
Oh,
I can
Click
see that now.
49,
You're about to
and you're all
start.
done.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
And
I
just
forgot,
leave.
I just did the same
scrolling
thing.
down, so I couldn't see it. Now I can
All
see
right,
it,
I'll be over
and
for it
it
this
works.
afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Thank
just did
you.
the same, and it works like
Thank
a
you,
charm.
Leon.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Learned something today. Thanks.
Yeah, indeed. Any other questions or comments? I must say I'm quite happy with this system so far. I mean, it has its bugs and its glitches and its learning curve, but we got done here for, if we were starting from scratch, we would have spent $3,000. We weren't starting from scratch, so we spent about 2,500. And I don't think that a club can do it for a whole lot less. Any other, I'm still fishing for questions and comments on all this. Okay, it looks like we're all good for now. We can always come back to it. And for those of you who have just checked in, I did announce earlier that we are going to have Josh Friend, the editor of American Woodturner, on with us on June 17th. So get your questions ready for Josh, and don't be hard on him, but bring questions, and we can grill him pretty tight on how he makes editorial decisions and balances his issues, and why there's nothing in it for me. And I think if you look at each issue carefully and honestly, you'll find there is something in it for you. But you'll probably might only find one thing in it for you. And that's because the AAW is a vast constituency with lots and lots of different constituencies within it. And everybody wants the journal to be targeted squarely at them, which of course isn't possible. Okay, I'm going to move along now. Barry, you want to do your thing?
Okay. Most of what you're looking at is just a portable, non-powered lathe, if you will, that I made to demonstrate what is at the heart of this thing here, and that is this spiraling jig that I've been tinkering with since I made it back in the doldrums of the COVID. And it's been tweaked and completely revised and simplified. At its heart, Doug, if you can kind of come down to this end here.
Well, I'm going to zoom. I've got to switch the camera to Doug. Okay, Doug is now looking at you overhead.
Okay. At the heart of it is I stumbled upon the fact that 3D printers have made things like these tooth belts, these 1/4-inch wide tooth belts that you can buy in 5-meter lengths, incredibly cheap, as well as all the sprockets and gears and hardware. It's all.
Barry, back up a second, and let's just say overall what this is. Barry has invented a very ingenious way of routing spirals in turned work, and the apparatus he's demonstrating is his way of being able to show other clubs how to do this. Since he can't take his whole lathe, he made a plywood lathe on which his apparatus can run. So that's what we're looking at. Okay, back to you, Barry.
Great. Okay, Doug just brought me an iPad. Now I can see what you're seeing here. Of all the stuff that's on here, I want to point out there only are really 3 components that are needed for its operation. The first one is the most complicated, and it's right here at the mounted just under the headstock. And what it amounts to is it receives the belting and passes it over a series of pulleys, and up on mounted behind the chuck here is right now I have it as a 3-pulley configuration. The size of the pulley dictates how tight the spiral will be, whether it'll be a long helix that makes maybe a half a revolution over the entire length of the object, or goes through 7 or 8 rotations along the object. So there is a lower limit you can make, and that is whatever will fit over your, this is for a 1-inch 8 headstock spindle. If you have a 1 1/4, you're even more confined on how small you can go. But you change those just by, when you take the chuck off, it is pinched between the chuck and the face of the spindle. It's easy to make these as big as you want, and therefore to get longer and shallower helixes. To get tighter ones, the bearing hole that I'm pointing to right here in the middle is a receptacle, if you will, these 2 sprocket assemblies, and again, this is all available for like 2 of these for $7, or 5 of the smaller ones for $7 on Amazon, and even cheaper on Alibaba. And they're just mounted on 1/4-inch shafts here. And effectively, if you insert this in there and then run your belting over that, and then a closed loop belt over this and your top wheel, you can either cut the angles in half or double the angles, and it can get you down to where you're doing a pretty tight spiral or an extremely long spiral. But those are just an add-on thing if making the pulleys doesn't do what you want it to do as far as steepness. And the little slot over here is for a tensioning idler pulley, so that you don't have to buy a precise belt to run between this down here and the pulley. You just take out the tension, or add the tension with the little idler pulley, and you're good to go. So that's the headstock component. And then some of you may already have some form of laminate trimmer or router carriage assembly for your lathe, because they come in handy for fluting, straight fluting and such. This one here is one I made, along with having traversing, it pretty freely goes in and out, and you can put a stop depth to it. This is just sitting on top of a real lathe, by the way, so it's pretty unstable, not bolted down. Anyhow, for right now, I will demonstrate just, I got a little die pen here. And the 3rd component is the tailstock piece, and it's just straightforward. It's got a receiving pulley. It has a pulley under this cranking disc that is meant to keep as many teeth as possible engaged on the sprocket. It's only a 1/2-inch sprocket, and you want to have as many teeth as you can so it doesn't skip and possibly ruin your work. So as we turn this, you can see the spiraling action. This is the medium-sized spiral.
Get the picture back. Hold on. Barry, are you going to put out drawings of this that we can publish to the group?
Now, I was actually thinking of publishing it if I can get something submitted to AEW maybe. But yeah, I'll put out drawings that are generic in that the spacing, for example, obviously you're not going to have a lathe that has two pieces of 80-20 aluminum on it. And so making the carriage base and making the three components on how they clamp down to your lathe bed is going to be dictated by the gap in your lathe bed and the thickness of your lathe bed. And actually, I don't know if Thomas Skirto Davis is with us today, but he's the president of the Keystone Woodturners nearby us here. And he has asked that I come down and demonstrate this thing at a July club meeting, and trying to think of making one. Each one will be one off. In their case, they have an American Beauty, I think, robust lathe. And so it's a specific bed gap and it's quite high. And to make all that just for a demonstration, I figured I'd go ahead and make this as a portable. I can use it at home and I can use it as a roadshow device. But if we come down below the end here, bringing the pen into engagement. And then as I go along, it'll trace what the helix will be. And sure enough, I'm going to go right across the defect in the wood. I just turned this morning to demonstrate this thing. And the helix is proportional to the diameter of the work. I don't know if the camera is picking that up. But right now, if I come back and do a repeat, you can see its repeatability. It has pretty much zero backlash. And because you can slide this in and out, I'm just keeping inward pressure so the pen stays against the wood. And there's been traced over twice. So it has good repeatability. And I just realized I have not mounted the, obviously this homemade tool does not have an indexing plate, but I have an indexing plate with me. Give me one minute here.
Barry, that seems to work really well. How do you control the depth to a constant number?
That's coming up.
Randy, you got a question while Barry's doing this? Randy, do you have a question?
Yeah, this blue index wheel that's here, it's just a plastic, and it's something that is sold by, I see I put it on with the lock-in pin in place. It's something that's sold online. There's a company that they actually make a spiraling jig. It doesn't operate like this though. But it's if you Google spiralmaster.com, you'll see they sell these. I forget what I paid for it a couple of years ago, but they are not expensive. I think they're $35. And it has the full range of, you can pretty much do any number of indexes you want to. It has 4 rings of rows, the outer ring of which it's every 5 degrees. So the way you operate this is, assuming I'm happy with the first pass here, I bring it on down all the way to its stop, where it's up hard against it here. And I'll go ahead and loosen the belt. And we're complicated here a little bit, or compromised a bit by, I can't utilize the full length of this device because we have to sit it on this lathe. and it's crowded, and so I have excess beltage here, if you will, that poses a problem with. I got to take up the slack. The belt has to remain under tension, or the teeth will just skip over the rubber teeth will just skip over the teeth on the sprocket. And so you want to make sure that the belt is under tension the whole time. And then,
John, I have a question that relates to the setup while these guys are working here. How do the guys sitting in the room hear the audio from us on Zoom?
It comes through the TV set.
Okay, so you're running the audio through a TV. That makes sense. Okay, I just wondered. I thought,
But it means that those of us in the room are not, we're amplified to you, but we're not amplified to us here yet. That's the next hurdle to figure out. So we have to talk loud enough to hear each other. Okay, Barry, go for it.
okay, part of what the problem was, and this is a recurring thing that I really have to figure out how to, maybe a little light bulb that runs by a battery with contacts. But quite often I have put little chatter mark at the end of a thing I'm turning because I failed to pull the index pin. And if you're on your lathe and you fail to free up the indexing, the head can't rotate. And your mechanism, meanwhile, is marching merrily along on a straight line. And that's part of what was going on. This right now should be uptight against the, as I showed you before, the ritual is you run this down tight, undo the belt, the clamp right here, rotate it however many degrees you want, put the pin in, and with the pin in place and the carriage uptight against there, you go ahead and tighten the belt down. And so therefore your whole system now recognizes, okay, my starting point is 5 degrees, 20 degrees, whatever, ahead of where it was before. I don't know what I'll end up with here, and I don't want to take the time to go through it again, but it's really a fast and repetitive process when you're doing it for real, especially on a lathe you're familiar with. So anyhow, I bring this back in, and I'm probably more like about 45 degrees off where I was. And I encountered a flaw in the wood there. So let me go ahead and just take this off. Okay, so this is, you can see the two trace lines. And you can also see where they are starting to get further apart as you go up in radius. That's going to happen. I don't know how much time we have, John. I have this pineapple jar.
We're going to let him go for it. And then all you guys who brought stuff to show and tell, you're going to have to bring it again next week.
This is just a piece of highly flawed cherry. And we just, I wanted to make a demonstration piece for.
We're not seeing it.
To show both forward.
Hold it over the middle of the lathe. Yeah.
Yeah, the idea is going to be, I turned it earlier, I turned it yesterday, and it's just with a piece of 4x4 cherry that, as you can see, it's got some pethy area here that is not really good enough to keep, but for a demonstration of the technique, it's a keeper. So anyhow, I hollowed out, and this top, ultimately, if it were salvageable, I would make a leaf assembly that, basically turn a series of fluted cones and then carve them out by hand for pineapple leaves. And to complete the appearance of a pineapple, in case it wasn't obvious by the top, create right hand and left hand spirals in here so they form like a diamond pattern on a pineapple. So that's the attempt.
Kai, you have a question?
Yeah. I actually just had a suggestion for Barry. Can you hear me, Barry?
Yes.
Yeah. I thought it might be handy to have something to tighten or tension your belt on the headstock side of your lathe, where this cross piece is with the handle on it that you use to move the sled. So if you have something there with a threaded rod or a bolt or something, that helps you to push that away from the headstock, then you could use that for tensioning the belt before you fix your hex bolts that hold it in position, the cross piece. Do you understand what I mean?
I didn't get it exactly. You're talking about moving the headstock piece?
No, sorry, the tailstock. I meant the tailstock. So on the other side, you have a similar piece that has got this little wheel on it that you turn.
Right.
On the tailstock side. Sorry, not on the headstock side. On the tailstock side. That was wrong. Yeah, and you push this piece outwards or away from the tailstock to tension the belt, and then you fix the two screws that hold it in position. And I thought it might be handy to have a bolt or something that pushes this. Yeah, that's where you have your hand at the moment, this piece, I mean. Your right hand, Barry?
Oh,
The cross piece where you have your right hand?
You're talking about the right.
Ah.
Right here, this piece here.
Right.
Yeah, that's the one. Oh.
Kai, are you speaking of like an adjustable tensioning mechanism?
Yeah, so that you can move that piece where you have your hand at the moment, that you can use that by turning a screw or something like that to tension the belt and then fix it to your bed. That might make it easier. Then you don't have to pull it outside and tension or
are you suggesting, and I think you are, like a swing arm?
Suggesting putting this screw like this here. No.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is that right?
So you just need some kind of stop in your in the aluminum bars that run on the lengths in square bars. Put some kind of stop, and then you have a bolt that goes through the cross piece and pushes against the stop, and then you can use something to tighten it and then fix it. Is that
And I didn't
know.
want to make any. You'd have to translate what you just spoke to me about for the user's real lathe, because if I add more things on here, it makes it more usable on this homemade lathe, but it would not solve the problem. You have to trust me that the real answer is, for an extra investment of about $13 on Amazon, or not even that, you can get 2 belts out of one 15-meter piece. So you buy one extra piece of belt and you fabricate 3 lengths of belt that will do any job you need. And as long as you don't run out on the length here, and I still have another ½ inch to go yet or so, but we wouldn't have encountered this problem if I had the full length of the bed to use. But I can't collapse this too much more without, you see right now, right here, I'm up against the tailstock, if you will.
We're about out of hour here, so let's
Okay, I see your point, Barry. It was just an idea. Yeah. Barry? Yeah, it's okay. I can see the point that you made. That it would work here with that one, but not with the real lathe that the person has who wants to use it. So yeah, that makes sense.
All right, we're up on the end of the hour, so wrap up somehow.
Okay, let me just do an ink tracing on here so we can. I will not go ahead and do a belt readjustment and go through that hassle again, but I want to make one tracing because I wanted to point out this aspect of the slope being proportional to the radius of the object. Because it's important to keep in mind. And it's one thing that can't be compensated for but that you could achieve if you were doing hand carving on spirals, I think. So we come in here. And I think I've broken my pen.
No, it's
Actually, what I haven't done is tightened it under the. Okay. So if we're on camera here, down here at either end, the slope, the helix is probably at about a 40-degree angle to the longitudinal. Get up here where the diameter is bigger, and you're down to probably a 45 or 50 degree. So you can imagine if you were doing like a candy dish or something, which you want it to make look kind of like a morning glory, or something that runs from like 3-inch diameter to say 9-inch diameter. That helix is going to go from very nearly parallel to the longitudinal axis to where it is very nearly perpendicular to the longitudinal axis. And I can't think of a way around that. You know, it is what it is, but for things like, I made a great set of candlesticks. You can follow curves, you can follow tapers. So the final thing I have to show that I'm not going to demonstrate is the, if I can find it now, the nose piece for the.
Somebody's making an awful lot of noise, and if I could find out who, I'd mute them, but I can't see who. So if you yourself know it's you, please mute yourself.
The component has fallen somewhere, and I can't find it here, but I can describe it to you. Basically, it turns out there's a PVC pipe. There is a diameter PVC pipe. I forget whether it's a 2.5 or 2 that will, with just a small amount of interior work, exactly slide over. Oh, here it is. Will exactly slide over the housing for it. This is a Harbor Freight $34 laminate trimmer. What I actually use at home is a Makita, mainly because it has a light on the front, but also it is the same diameter as these, and so that's kind of handy. That this thing right here, which is PVC pipe that I have slotted so it can be compressed or expanded, a hose clamp, and then I turned a piece of wood that would fit in there, and I made, unfortunately, the bit that's in here right now is not the right length to utilize this, but your standard bit is about 3 1/8 inches long. If you use a CNC bit or a standard length router bit, it will protrude from the end here. And you can slide this up or down by about a 1/2 inch so that what is being revealed is the depth of cut on the cutter you want to use. And so all you have to do is you just push this in against the work, and this the surround here on the nose piece rides against your wood and controls your depth. And so you can just keep steady inward pressure like I did with the pen, and it just follows the contour of the work. Obviously, the steeper you get on slope, the more differential you're going to have, because your rim here is in contact and your cutter over in here is what's actually making the depth. And so as you get steeper, the cut will be a little bit shallower. Ideally, we could rotate this so it was always normal to the surface. The problem there is this belt would have to have some kind of a long extension spring on it to keep constant tension, because as you're rotating this thing, if you rotate it and the belt doesn't move, you're kind of just moving the router bit in place. And so it has to really move with the right amount. And so you have to have a belt that passes directly under where your cutter is, so that you could, when you rotate it full swing, your cutter isn't technically really moving on the wood, and you could follow the contour normal to its surface like this and get great results. But the belt has to be able to recover that slack and allow it to rehappen as your router goes in and out following the contour. So it's a complicating factor with I'm sure it produced great results, but it just wasn't on my horizon right now.
And on that note, Barry, I'm going to thank you very much for that. I'm going to go back to gallery view so we can see all you dudes, or try to. I think I've removed all the pins. Do you guys see everybody? Okay. We're over the hour, so I'll pause for any last questions. I'm sorry that went as long as it did. But that's what you get when you're prototyping and testing out new stuff, which is what we've been doing here today. So if you all brought stuff to do show and tell, we'll do all that next week. I don't have any other entertainment planned for next week, so please bring something. I have something here I'm not going to show you now because I'm going to save it for next week too. And on that note, unless anybody has any last words. No, Ron, you got your hand up. No, that's a thumb up. Okay. Thank you all, guys.